What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Thank you for checking out this special episode of the Keep Climbing podcast. As you can see, we're not in the studio today. I'm at Premier Pitching headquarters in my office here, and Mr. Brian French, he is, tell them where you're at, Brian.
We're at the Ozark Mountain Sports Complex for the MSHSAA State Championships.
Yeah, we're rocking and rolling. You can see the games going on there behind them. Really awesome stuff. Awesome opportunity for all these players and coaches. A really fun time of year too. The topic we wanted to talk about today. I have my own personal, experience down there. It wasn't at that complex and facility. It looks much bigger and nicer than what we played at, actually. But we played at Meter Park. We played at Meter Park for the state championship in 2011. I'm a Francis Howell graduate and was fortunate to be on some pretty good baseball teams there through the years. So yeah, 2011, we were able to get it done down in Springfield, and it was a really awesome experience, and one that I tell people all the time, like it's one of my favorite baseball memories still, and I think some of these kids look at me like I'm crazy, like all this baseball stuff I've been able to go do, all these stadiums I've been at, all these whatever. Like, you just don't get baseball in an environment like that really ever again. Couple different things come to mind. One, playing with some of my best friends that I played with since I was playing in Little League. Like, that's you just don't get relationships that deep anymore. Playing in an environment where the coach isn't constantly trying to replace you with scouting and recruiting. Like in high school, man, you got what you got, and that the coach has got your back no matter what, because he's got to. and I had a great coach in Tony Perkins, and Tony always, I always felt like Tony had our backs and had my back specifically, and helped me with whatever I needed during that time frame. But then even once I wasn't there, I actually just got off the phone with him this morning. We worked together still a little bit, with our summer league and different details like that. But yeah, we had a great run down there, had a great experience. I'll tell you what, though, it definitely, it was like, I think the word's anticlimactic, where you've got like your semifinal game down there and you've got your final game down there. Well, our semifinal game about to give everybody a heart attack. And then the final game was very like, oh yeah, we just won this game. That wasn't anything special. It was like, we won by a lot of runs and the other team made a lot of errors, so like it wasn't the real exciting game. The semifinal game went extra innings, and at one point I had my hands down on my face like that, starting to cry, thinking that we were done. And I look up, and Tony's oldest son, actually, Zach, was a freshman or a sophomore on the team that year, and he steps up and hits a homer and pulls us through. And yeah, it was a wild ride. But really, what I wanted to talk about, the concept, I guess, for today is in some of those stories, and in some of these experiences for these players, is expand a little bit more on like how to handle the heightened environment, if you will. Heightened environment, whether that's internal or external pressures, both of them are very real. And I think the external is very obvious, where it's like a little bit more like fans and hooting and hollering, and the dugouts are a little bit more wound up. The game just is to these kids and players, this is the most important game they've ever played in their life, more than likely.
Brett, I add something to that? Because I think it's
Absolutely
interesting here, the physical surroundings. This is a major league ballpark. It's 330 down the lines. It's 375 in the power alleys. A high school player playing in your high school ballpark and then coming to this environment, isn't that a little bit difficult sometimes to acclimate yourself?
I'm telling you, it sounds weird, but when you get in bigger stadiums like that, it really throws your depth perception off. You go from like a chain link fence to some grandstands, and then you go from some grandstands to a bigger college grandstands, and then bigger college grandstands to professional grandstands. I promise you, it's a weird feeling. It doesn't take that long to get over it, but like the first time you play catch out there, it can feel a little weird. Like this, just like I don't know how else to describe it so that other people could understand, but it's just like a depth perception thing. Like the the scenery and the setting just like throws that off a little bit. So I think once you get rocking and rolling and you're still 60 feet away from the plate, and the bases are still 90 or same distance across, so you can kind of shake it somewhat quick. And to be honest with you, a lot of these kids with their travel ball circuits, or I know that that's a bigger stadium, but a lot of the schools in the St. Louis area do a good job of going to play at Car Shield, or some of these other like spots around town that would be like comparable. So it's not their first experience in there, which I think helps them. But yeah, absolutely. Just literally the physical structure that you're playing in from the minute you walk into it could have a slight change in the way that you go about doing things. So
Yeah.
yeah, and so like that's a very like basic external factor, very basic, and can make an impact on you and your approach to the game and your execution in the game, all the way down to like internal pressures of like not trying to do too much within the scenario, not trying to, you hear people say like not trying to be the hero, not trying to do too much at the plate, do too much on the mound, and I think in like heightened environments like this, it's really easy, in not like a selfish manner, but just like I want to win, I want to win, and I want to do everything I can, that like I've had experiences like that where I come out in the first inning and just like overthrowing a little bit, like just a little bit too juiced up, and very rarely in an environment like that you're ever going to have to like get your team going, like usually you have to like do something to kind of calm it down, have everybody understand this is still just the same baseball game we've been playing all year. We can't try to do too much, because this game, man, this game that we love, like as soon as you start to try to force something to happen, it'll eat you alive. You really got to let this game come to you one pitch at a time, and not get too far ahead of yourself, but then also like when you're at the plate, you trying to crush this 2-1 fastball, and then the pitch is like a little bit high, even if it's a strike, or whatever, and you trying to overswing on that, results in a pop up to the second baseman. Whereas, if I just stay tried and true with my approach and my delivery, it's a line drive in the right center field gap while I'm standing on second base, and then we can celebrate and get hyped up. So um, it's hard to do. It's hard to do in environments like that. Like I said, a couple of those factors of like, it's a big, cool venue. That's awesome. It gets everybody fired up. The importance of the game for all of them, like where they're at in their careers and journeys. A lot of the kids who are juniors and seniors, probably be the biggest game that they've ever played in their whole life, because they might not go anywhere to play baseball after that or do anything after that, and that's amazing, like so there's a lot of emotion that goes into it, and what a great like life teacher this could be, to help deal with and handle your emotions when externally everything seems like it's going crazy. You know what I mean? When everything's chaos around you, for you to be able to, control your emotions, step up to the plate, whether you get a hit or not, or you're on the mound, whether you're successful or not. It's more about the delivery and the approach of that I was, focused, energetic, and dialed into what I was doing, that I wasn't letting, external factors kind of, dictate my emotional state, and that right there, won't guarantee you winning, but I guarantee you, if you don't do those things you won't win, type of thing. It's kind of a prereq. So yeah, have you had any experiences since you've been down there, maybe seeing those emotions play out with any of the coaches or players on the field? What's been your experience down there live in action?
Watching baseball like this, I think you do see the experience I think take over a lot more than if kids have been here. You see them a lot more settled. If it's the first time you haven't seen a team there before, I think the moment is a little large, and you'll see
Yeah.
kids react much more emotionally negative than you will positive if something doesn't go right, if something here, whatnot. And we saw some of that this week. We saw some a lot of the negative body language within the team and things of that nature, and you always think to yourself, I do. I'm watching this and I'm like, come on, young man, you get set that aside, refocus your mind. And
Yeah.
as well as anybody, 17 years old, that's hard to do. You're the
Amen.
maturity level it takes
It's
to
hard to
be
do at
able to.
32 still, Brian.
It is. You're right. That's
Yeah.
very true because I think the competitive nature of wanting to
Yep.
win, it can overtake you to a negative more
Amen.
than a positive. And I believe this, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong. That's fine. But baseball, to me, the emotions are there and the high points and low points, but you can't play baseball on an emotional level. I think you have to play baseball on a mental level.
Yeah.
Football, basketball, some of these other sports, I think are played very much on an emotional level. But I think
Yeah.
baseball, if you allow the emotional highs and lows and ebbs and flows to dictate how you play the game, I think it's going to be very difficult. And I think that's what we see in these championships because it's just one game.
Amen. Amen. I'll tell you what, once I got into professional baseball, we've talked about this, how I started like journaling a ton,
Mm-hmm.
right? One of the most reoccurring things, I promise you, that I wrote in there, besides don't walk people, was to like, I forget the exact phrase that I used, but was something to the extent of removing the emotion, from my execution, and because it's really hard to execute with that like type of skill,
Mm-hmm.
like those other sports that you listed, I would say those aren't like as much like skill based sports. Absolutely, there's a ton of skill in like shooting a 3-pointer, and I don't mean to demean any of it, but they revolve a lot more around your athleticism, I would say, from like a jump, strength, sprint, speed type of thing, that like baseball definitely has elements where it's like that, but the pitch through the zone or the bat on the ball or even like picking up a ball that you're fielding, it is so skill specific. And like in an environment like that, the higher elevated your heart rate is,
Yeah.
the harder it is to do and execute some of those things. If you're a linebacker, like your heart can beat through your chest, you're gonna go freaking run through a wall on that guy. You know what I mean? And that probably makes you play better. But when you're on the mound and that threshold of you know emotion or energy, I don't know what you want to call it, like boils over. You're throwing stuff off the backstop. Let alone a guy getting hits off of you. So yeah, I mean, I
Absolutely.
I I I agree with that wholeheartedly.
And these are the things that when you see, I think really, I won't say determine completely, but I think has a large effect on the outcome. Uh, you see teams that can handle that emotional thought process and come up, have quality at bats throughout the whole game. You put yourself in a position when you on the mound, you can come out. If you make a mistake, how do you reset yourself? Somebody makes an error and then does it pile the emotional
Yeah,
stress of error after error after error, and you can see that at the high school level more than any. You very real, very rarely do I ever see a clean game when we're here, and it's not that these teams aren't very good; they're really good.
yeah.
But that's to the point of this. The emotional state is hard to control. So I think you see a lot more errors here than you would even in a district championship game.
Yeah. So my own experience, we played, in our final game there, and I'm pretty sure our final opponent, it's hard to remember these days, but like they made like 8 errors. that like there's no way they made it to the state championship making 8 errors. But like to your point, like compounding, issues, which this game, the first thing that came to my mind when you started talking about those things was like this game is such an individual team sport. You know what I mean? Like it is probably like other than a double play, like one guy, two guys touch the ball like every play, and it's the pitcher versus the hitter, and the catcher's obviously very involved in there. But it's such an individual sport that it takes like everybody individually being able to make that decision that I'm not going to let this get the best of me, or I'm going to slow down enough to not let this get the best of me, or however that individually needs to be handled for that player. But like, yeah, one through nine in the lineup, every single position on the field. But then, I mean, think about this too. Like your guys sitting on the bench, that got to come in and run, or got to come in and pitch in the fifth inning, and like if they're not mentally checked in there, that like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pitch this game, or I'm gonna help the team win, do something, and then they get thrusted out on the field, and they already weren't mentally prepared that I'm gonna get into this game. That's where you see some of these like, quick little pickoffs, and now your tying run that was on seconds now picked off, and everybody's like, oh no, what happened? Like so encourage all these players that like any game that you ever play, unless you pitch the day before or whatever, and the coach is very specifically like, hey, you are not playing today. You've got to go into that game expecting that I'm going to do something to help the team win, even if you haven't played for 2 months, because if you find yourself in that game, you'll have way more regrets, not mentally preparing for it than mentally preparing for it and not getting in. That's how you see that in those environments. Like you'll get a middle reliever come in, and he wasn't necessarily thinking he was going to need to bridge the gap to the guy who usually closes or does the games, or finishes the games, and he's got to come in and try to get like an out with a man on first base and 2 outs, and walk a couple guys and walk a run in, and then he has to bring the other guy in, and then he gives up a little bleeder hit, or whatever. That's how stuff like snowballs and compounds. That like momentum is just such a real game in our, or a real thing in our game, that as soon as that like snowball starts slipping, everybody can feel it. Like what you were just talking about, everybody can feel that. It's impossible to like measure or quantify, but holy cow, when you're in the dugout, it's like this like throat clenching, like holy cow, what's going on right now, like and it feels like you're sliding and you just can't stop, that at the end of the day, you need somebody on your team to kind of like, and then maybe it's the pitcher, or maybe it's the shortstop, or maybe it's the maybe it's the coach, I don't know, but to step up and be like, hey, enough is enough. We're fine, we're good, we've got to exhale, and help kind of lead the team through that experience, because everybody can feel it. And I think that like when you're the leader on those teams, coach or player wise, and you start to feel that, you've got to try to nip it in the bud as quickly as you can, because once you start sliding, man, it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope, especially in an environment like that where there's so many internal and external factors at play that weren't there on your on your Wednesday game against conference opponent in the middle of April. So
Right. And that's the emotional thought process in that. Does the leader of your team, who can bring all that back in and push that away, makes the diving play pop and go, look guys, we're okay, we're still playing baseball.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
if that doesn't happen sometimes, that's where the roller coaster heading down on that emotions. As you said, everything, you can feel it. You're right, because you can feel it. I can sit right here watching and feel that.
Not even affiliated. Yeah, no, exactly. Amen. Not even affiliated with either team, and just be like, ooh, I know what's going on right now.
Yes. It's amazing. And to your other point, I loved what you said, because Barry Bonds said this: I got to beat one guy.
Yep.
At the plate. I got to beat one guy. The rest of what happens after that, I don't have a lot of control over. I got to beat one guy. And so happens that would be you on the other end of that.
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
pitching, right? So you're
Yep.
on the
Yep.
mound. That's the same thought process. I got to beat one guy.
Well, I mean, holy cow! I think it could be like times 10 there because you got, or times 7 maybe because you got 7 guys behind you. It's like 7-on-1 right now. I think is the attitude you could take on this. It's that like you got guys that are facing a hitter that they think's like real good. He's had a real good season, and a guy you don't want to beat you in the other type of lineup or whatever. But like that's why baseball statistics look the way that they do, and we get you know I think I mean, look at some statistics on how many times in any league. I think the better statistics that are out there to look at and compare is in the major leagues, obviously, but it's going to be like this in any league, and take note of it. How many more strikes get thrown in 3-0 counts as opposed to 0-0 counts? And the only difference is because they know they're not swinging, most likely not swinging. So if we just took that approach on an 0-0 count and we got more 0-1 counts, hitters hit like, I don't even know what, like below 200, in 0-1 counts, and any count on after that, where you've got the advantage as the pitcher. So if we could just treat more 0-0 counts like 3-0 counts, then we'd probably be a whole lot better off. And even if they hit it, you got 7 guys behind. And sure, he might go back to the dugout feeling like he won that at bat, but I won the war. You know what I mean? Like you get hit it hard. I don't care. Yeah, it's my job to not let you hit it hard, but like my job's actually just to get you out and get to the next pitch. So like, if you feel a win in that, good for you, buddy. But go sit back down on the bench and the next guy's up. That would be my like rebuttal to Barry Bonds's. And he's saying that, and that's what made him great and elite, and that should be the mentality that I think a good hitter takes, because that puts you in an environment where you're not trying to do too much. You're simplifying that whole game, and that's great. But counter that, I'd say, good for you. Go have a seat. So
Exactly.
yeah. So that environment, like that environment down there that you're in right now, very special. I think it's a very special time for a lot of the players, but also for the families, and everybody is into their seasons, into their spring seasons. Like these guys are finishing up, and they're going to be transitioning into like what they do for the summer. None of their brains or hearts are on that at all, yet. But that's the reality. Like that's the reality. We're in this kind of weird in between transition time. And a lot of players are kind of prepping for summer ball already, or finishing up their season, and then they'll start prepping for summer ball. But that environment that you're in down there, I'll tell you, I've got to play in a lot of cool places, environments, stadiums, games, leagues. I still have just fantastic memories of being down, winning our state championship in 2011 with a bunch of my buddies who, we grew up playing together, won a bunch of cool games when we were younger, so for that to kind of be the I don't know, last memory that we all kind of had together, I think was really special. The bus ride home after that, was fantastic. And it happened to be on the same day as our graduation. It was a really cool video still somewhere, probably YouTube or Facebook or something. So I got to walk across the stage as a senior in high school with, the state trophy in one hand, and then, walk across and grab my diploma in the other, and we all made it for our graduation that year, and got to walk across the stage in our dirty baseball uniforms, which we wouldn't have had it any other way. We wouldn't have had it any other way.
I just got chill bumps, dude. That's cool.
Yeah, I've got a really cool picture, shaking our principal's hand, grabbing my diploma, and like holding up the state trophy, for the whole student and how community there to see, which I thought was really cool at the time for sure. So it's a neat story and ending to my high school experience for sure. So very thankful for our time and our coaches and our in our wins that we were able to kind of have there has definitely made a big impact on me as a person.
I, to me, when I hear stories like that, it's as you let me get my thought. As you call this keep climbing, you know, what are you climbing towards and things of that nature. I've met a lot of people throughout my career doing different things, and special moments like that are very, very, very rare.
Yeah.
And not to take them for granted when you get
Yeah.
into a place like this. And I think that's hard for a high school kid to sometimes understand, maybe even in
Absolutely.
yourself, didn't
Mhm.
notice, it just
No,
happened.
not at all.
And today you look back at that and you go, and we're talking about that. I mean, I did. I got goosebumps because to
Yeah.
me, I think that's one
Yeah.
of the cool things. I didn't do that. I've
Yeah.
met people. I met a gentleman who won an NAIA national basketball championship. And he kind of was like, yeah, it's NAIA. I'm like, dude, I don't have one.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So
What a great experience. Yeah.
right. You look at these things and I think sometimes they get a little cheapened. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things, it becomes more clear, I think, as you get older, especially as you play more or you get more involved with anything, right? Like for
Mm-hmm.
us, this is baseball, but I think this would be similar to really whatever you were doing. That yeah, 100%. Like even just these players right now that are playing in this game behind you that are going to get fourth in state. You know, it's not going to be what they came here to do.
Right.
They're not going to be overly excited about it. At church on Sunday, I've got a young man that's graduating from high school, and they won fourth in their volleyball state tournament here recently this year, and he won the GAC Conference Player of the Year. Absolute stud. That's amazing. And I asked him about it, and he kind of has this, oh well, we got fourth at state. And I was like, dude, that's amazing. Like you got to find a way to be proud of. I get, as a competitor, I'm the same way. I'm not counting and stacking my second place trophies up there. But my point is, when you get on the backside of it, you get old like us, you realize how those experiences shaped you, how thankful you are for them, the people and the community that was around you during that time frame, that um you view it in such a different lens, I think. So even like looking at this game right here, while these guys may be playing for a third and fourth place, even the winner of that team is probably going to walk away being like, yay, we won third place. Like, man, you should be so excited about that. And I'm sure they will. And I'm just giving a hypothetical example. Like, they're going to be proud of it. That's an awesome feat to accomplish. But if you feel any type of sideways about it, like, oh, but we didn't win first, it's like, yeah, I mean, I get that. Be competitive. I would be the same way, but you've got to get to a place too, I think, where like you're thankful for those experiences that shape you. And I think as you get older and you recognize how fleeting maybe some of those moments and experiences are, that like you just realize, man, you just don't get this again. Like you just don't get this again, whether it's like the relationships or the competitive opportunity, or just the fact that a lot of these seniors are going to go to college and get thrown out into like real life here soon. Like, even if it's just like a culmination of your childhood kind of wrapping up, if you will. Like, my encouragement to all those guys down there would just be to like slow down, take all of this in, compete your butt off. But at the end of the day, like, you should be so proud of what you've accomplished, this year in your high school career, as a person. Be thankful for that, experience and environment that God's kind of put you in there. So it's a really cool thing. And I think, the older you get, I think the more special it becomes to you, because yeah, I mean, I remember going off to college after a state championship, and it's just like, yeah, nobody really cares. But people do. People do, and we certainly still do. And you know uh, thankful for it for sure.
There's still quite a bit of YouTube stuff. I think that was that big district final game too. I think with you and Zumwalt East that year at CNH.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a crazy game. I mean, there was quite a few journeys that, and I think this is an interesting thing as you bring that to bear. How can we change the narrative a little bit for these kids when we're talking about maturity? We're talking about keep climbing. I love the fact that you started journaling. How many of these kids can start this moment if, as a senior, journaling there? What are your lessons, that you can take and you read back, you get to this point, you write those things down. And what did I gain from that? Every experience has to be something. How can I learn? How do I be a better person in that respect? Because if you're that, then I can take those things into the next thing, into everything I do as a person, as a friend, as a student, because we're still amateur athletes at this point. It matters. First place matters when you're making 20 million and that owner, has made a big hefty investment. I think college gets that way at certain places to a point, and some of and a lot of these coaches, it's their livelihood. I get that, but it's incremental, and understand that journey. And how can we, as people that have been through these places, help these kids begin to understand how to do that? And I think that's the important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The life lessons kind of taught through all that, I think is really important. I think that, if you're paying attention when you're 17 and 18, you can really be picking up a lot and getting ahead of the curve because, like we talked about earlier, it's not a 17 or 18-year-old boy's strong suit to be paying attention, I guess you could just say.
Right.
So and I think a lot of those things like set very real goals for yourself, because without a vision of where you're climbing, like what do you even, it helps set your course of direction all the way down to day by day. What am I going to do to accomplish what is in front of me, or what God's put in front of me? So I think some of those details that you can really be active in pursuing. Like if you don't know really like where you're going towards, you won't know like where you're where you're headed. If you don't know where you're headed, how are you going to know like what even first step to take? So and I think part of my thought or philosophy in the naming of this podcast, and just my, like, I don't know, thoughts or mantra or whatever, is that I think that's a great thing to pull from it. But I also will say that, like, at the end of the day, like, if we just keep taking one step, even if it's a baby step forward each day, find something to get better at every single day, as a person, as a man, as a husband, as a believer, as a baseball player, as a anything, like that's like what we're here to do. That's what we're called here to do. And I think at the end of the day, there's only so much you can control. And I think trying to like grab stuff by the throat and make it happen, is not sustainable, not attainable. You know what I mean? So being able to kind of roll with the punches at times, and like handle adversity, and all of those things I think are very critical. Life skills like you're talking about, that if you're paying attention when you're playing baseball, you can really pick up some of those things from.
Absolutely.
So, all righty. Well, what's the rest of the schedule look like for you today? How are we looking here? And is the rain going to hold off?
Today,
good.
We're going to be pretty nip and tuck the next 2 days, man.
Yeah.
How was it like when you were down here? And Meter Park was grass at that point too, right?
Yeah. Didn't rain a drop. We got in, got out, and we were clean.
Today we should I think we have some pretty good matchups. Fatima taking on Fairgrove. Fatima's a program that's been pretty good for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah. I think they've historically had some pretty good success on the baseball field for sure.
Yeah, and that's in the central part of the state. Got going against Fairgrove, which is down here in the southwest part of the state. The favorite that a lot of people, I thought was, when we did, Kevin Mulder, we talked a lot about Lone Jack, was upset and not here, which, see, there you go. It happens. When you're playing one game, boom. And then later today, we've got the Class 4 championship with Chillicothe taking on Logan Rogersville.
Cool. So tell me, what classes how's this evolve and what comes next the next couple of days? How's it work down there right now, schedule wise?
We'll finish Class 3 and 4 today. Tomorrow, the Class 5 and 6 semifinals will be played. And then on Saturday, Class 5 and 6, third place in championship will be played.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, best of luck to all those teams. Best of luck to you guys. Stay dry. I see you got your little tent. We might need to get some sides on those tents. That takes away your aesthetic with the field behind there, but can't get the equipment wet. Drew will kill you. So
he's shaking his head, yes.
Yeah. So okay. Well, you guys have a great trip. Best of luck to all those teams. Best of luck to you guys. Thank you guys for checking out this episode. Like, comment, subscribe if you've got any thoughts or topics or questions from today's episode. Feel free to let us know in the comments section. We appreciate you guys checking this out, and best of luck down there to you guys and everybody wrapping up their spring seasons this year.